Hi, welcome again to another session with Peaceful Passages. Um, I'm Theresa Bates, the founder and educator of the ministry that the Father has so much blessed me with. And today, on today's show, I have who became now one of my dearest friends. Her name's Joanne Miller. And I had asked her to to talk a little bit. So, hi, Joanna, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. This is it's a blessing to be able to have you here. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I know we had met through a mutual friend, and I don't know a lot of the story before we were introduced. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Because today, this program is going to be a little bit more of a testimonial on what Joanna had walked through and how this ministry was able to be a blessing to her and the community. So, talk a little bit about beforehand, if you're comfortable with that.
How far back do you want me to
go? just a little bit about, just touch on, because we were introduced before your husband passed away. So
that's true.
Not a lot of detail around that, but just more of how God connected you and I together.
Well, a mutual friend of ours, as you know, her husband passed away very suddenly. Mm-hmm. He was actually on the road driving a big rig, and thank the Lord, there was nobody else involved in that. He had a catastrophic medical event and passed away, and eventually our friend had to go kind of looking for him, or had the police do that. I'm not sure which. And or maybe the police showed up at her door to tell her. I think that was more what happened. And well, in any case, it's really a blur, because trauma does that. Mm-hmm. And so in any case, she was talking about how she really couldn't afford to bury him the way it's traditional in our American culture to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And that there was a lot about it that she didn't like anyway. And she was looking for alternatives. And I believe that she had met you even before that. And she said that she was going to do everything differently, and there'd be some people who would probably like it and a bunch of people who wouldn't, and she didn't care.
Yeah. I remember our particular mutual friend. What was interesting was she drove down to my area and had a class that Thursday, and her husband passed away that Sunday. It was very fast. So
yeah, it was.
Right. So from that, and her experience from there, so she walked you through a little bit of what was done, and is that what drew you to do to call me 6 months later? Because I kind of want to more stay with your story on how we helped you.
Well, when she started talking about what her plans were for her husband, I was very intrigued by that, because first of all, I could see where things were going. And, when you, sorry.
It's okay. For those that are watching it, the passing of her husband is a little bit more on the recent. She's still within her first year, so we give a lot of grace.
I just barely passed 7 months.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's hard.
I could see where things were going with my husband, and that I was soon going to get the invitation to that club nobody wants to be a part of, which is widowhood. And so my husband was actually a Yid kid in the hinterlands of North Carolina. So I felt that doing the Hava Kadisha would be more along the lines of the ancient paths that we had been trying to follow through the scriptures. And fortunately, his mom and dad had actually paid for a plot for him years and years and years ago. I mean, decades ago.
Wow.
And that and the fact that his oldest brother knew a lot of the people on the board who were kind of responsible for making the rules and so on regarding the Jewish cemetery. He was actually buried in the Jewish cemetery. And if I had to buy a plot at that time, it would have easily doubled the cost of his funeral arrangements. So, do you have any questions for me at this point?
Right. Well, so at this particular point, between the time that our friend's husband passed away and I was in contact with you, was probably, I was roughly 6 months, because I started talking to you around September, October last year. And
it was September, I think.
Yeah. It was around Sukkot time of year. And so the Father blessed me with the opportunity to kind of come alongside and walk you through and just walk with you the time where your husband did pass away. So it was.
I didn't have it. Sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't have enough information to do what I felt needed to be done.
Right.
And so you were gracious enough to pretty much drop everything and come to me when I forget whether, I think I sent you some money, didn't I?
Yeah, it's you paid for the flight. So what was kind of cool about that is when he did pass away, there was some challenges that we had to overcome, and watching the Father's hand move for the opportunity for me to be able to come out there was pretty miraculous and beautiful, and was able to get, again, by the Father's hand, the plane ticket, which ended up being almost half the cost of what it normally should have been for the next day. And I think the round trip was like $250, which is unheard of last year. But and it was interesting because when I came out there, there were still a few decisions that need to be made. people were still a little skittish and not really sure. But what was a blessing was there were a few men in the congregation that kind of stepped up to the plate. And
yep. And right after you, they are my heroes. Because Nathan was a big guy and not real tall, but he was big. And I couldn't have managed his weight on my own. And really, it was almost, well, it was very, very personal, very, very intimate. And it gave me, and I think his other family, a lot of closure in a way that traditional funerals just don't, because I've been to both now. And so we didn't have him embalmed, and so he didn't take on that waxy kind of plastic look that you usually see. He looked like himself. And he looked really, really good.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he was buried, what, 2 days after death? Maybe. I know it was pretty quick.
I believe I think it was 3, yeah, because his family wanted to come in, and I forget what day of the week the 26th was.
Right. So I think that was Friday, and I don't normally like to fly out on Shabbat, but that was the protocol that the Father had us walk through. And what was interesting was the funeral home that you used services a lot of the Jewish people in your area, the Jewish community in your area. And walking with the particular funeral director that was there on point, he was very helpful on a lot of different levels. And where we follow a lot of the Jewish rituals when we do the actual Tahara, but we also showed not just Nathan, but also his family being of Jewish descent, the blessing, the opportunity, and the respect on the funeral aspect.
You know what's kind of funny though? They're all Reformed, and apparently what we did was a very Orthodox kind of thing.
Well, I think they were surprised. They're like, "Oh my gosh, he looks good." I'm like, "Well, of course."
Yeah.
I think sometimes people don't know what to expect, but when they see, they don't really see the intention, but you see the after effect of the blessing and the love and the prayers and how we took care of him as respectfully as we could. And just watching the reaction of his brothers and son was priceless. Really priceless.
Because of certain family dynamics, which I won't discuss.
That's fine.
His son was kind of left out of some things and pushed aside, and I didn't feel that was right.
Right.
I felt that would just lead to more grieving.
Right. Challenges.
On his part that wouldn't have really any good
outcome. Right.
It wouldn't have any good effect or any good. I think it would draw out the grieving process in a way that's really kind of damaging to the person. And so when you gave me that dirt from Israel, and I said I I was going to save some of it.
Mhm.
Actually, he was the only one, other than you and me, that put dirt on his father.
Mhm.
And I think that really, really helped him.
Mhm.
I'm really so glad because he was a big help to us when Nathan was sick. A really big help. And all the way up to, his actual death, which in a way took us all by surprise because he went out a few days before I expected him to. And I think everybody else was clueless about, he's going to die. I mean, they knew eventually, but.
Right. And that's one thing with go ahead.
When you're in that situation, you're always hoping for the best. And you, well, because I had been taking care of him so long and because I had seen very, very up close and personal his, what is that word? Where he was just having more and more and more problems.
Just the decline.
Decline. That's the word I was looking for. I was personally watching the decline. And actually, Nathan had asked me if he was dying. So I felt like if I told him yes, then it would take the heart out of him and remove any possibility of him getting better. And we prayed. I offered to get somebody to talk to him about it if he wanted, and he said no. And he just wanted to pray, and we prayed, and after that, I was just really happy.
Yeah, it's hard because when somebody asks you, I've been asked that a couple times, and it's a hard position to be in because yes, you know that they are dying, but you don't want them to lose hope. You want them to try to keep fighting. So you're in that crux, and people do with what they need to do at the particular moment. But sometimes when there was one instance where I was asked that question by one of my clients when I was working hospice, and I said, actually, yes, you are. And the comment was, that's what I thought. Okay, how can we make this the best? And it's hard because that helped them, but also on the flip side, that wasn't my spouse. That wasn't my child. I wasn't somebody intimate, but I was in that instance was somebody safe to talk with. So with what you did, with what you told him, that was accurate for you guys. And having somebody else to step in, because that's a hard place to put a spouse, because you're kind of balancing both sides. You want to see him. You want to see him survive. You want to see him to get better. And, there's 100% mortality rate. So we're all going to pass away sooner or later. And learning to acknowledge it at that time, it's hard, because sometimes we can say yes. Sometimes we say, well, eventually we're all gonna pass. But that allowed you and Nathan to be able to have more of those conversations, because you ended up getting closer to him during that, which I thought was beautiful.
Yeah, the one thing I think was very telling about the whole process was that each of the men who helped me well, it changed their lives. And now this is the way they want to be buried and not the traditional way for our culture.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, when it's interesting because once people don't really understand what the basis of this ministry is, it's not just hands-on care, but because there's so many other ministries, great ministries out there that help the before, the during, and after death. But people don't understand what we do until they see what we do. And walking through what we do, a lot of it takes the fear out of it, because the blessing you had, even though he did pass away, there was not a lot of complication with the Tahara. And that's as detailed as I want that aspect to be there in the room. But it took a lot of the fear out of the men going, I don't know I can do this. And then walking in the room going, okay, I can do this. And watching that shift happen, and it happens a lot, going, okay, well, let me take care of my brother.
Because if you've never done it before, you have no clue what you're going to be faced with.
Right.
But I would have to say that, one of the things about me was that I was always like walking by my husband, I was always touching him, always caressing his arm, or starting at the top of his head and running my hand down the back of his head and neck, and just whenever I'd pass him, just another little caress. And when he was in the hospital, it was really hard to do that because you've got a lot of, well, it's a very cramped space, and the more people you have in there, the more cramped it is.
Right.
And so there wasn't much of a chance for that. And after he died, and I was there, and I was the one that noticed that he had passed. And I was holding his hand when he was going. Very, very, very peaceful. It's like he was there, and then he just wasn't. There was no outcry, no struggle, no. I mean, it was just like he just I don't know, slid into heaven. Well, I don't believe that people go straight to heaven. Sheol.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of times that's how the end of life is. It just is. It's quiet. It's surreal, but it's very, very peaceful. Our society doesn't want it to be like that. That's how they're trying to portray it. So we're scared of it. But we're nearing the end. We had a little over 3 minutes left. What I want to talk about a little bit is more of how our services affected you, a little bit more on affecting the community, because even though we came in and helped at the time of death, that service doesn't stop. That friendship doesn't stop. So talk about that in the community aspect.
Everyone who was part of what happened was blessed by it, including myself. It has started a little bit of a change in our community. But in order to see what I think needs to happen, I'm going to have to work at that a little harder because, again, people who were not as involved don't get it.
Right. It's hard, and when you're trying to plow the road, especially on the topic of end of life, it's trust me, it's hard. It is hard, but it's a blessing.
I know, but yeah, it was a huge blessing, and it's still very comforting to me that I washed my husband with the help of these gentlemen, and I dressed my husband, and for his last appearance in public. Most of the time, I think it's men do men and women do women, but I was a very hands-on wife. And even though you might see me crying now, talking about it, whenever I have to talk about Nathan right now, it makes me cry.
Right.
But I wouldn't change a thing, not a thing. It was very much a blessing, and then something this intimate is a real bonding experience. And you dropped everything, like I said, and came out to not just direct us through the Tahara, but you were very compassionate.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
And I'm happy to still be your friend.
You're very sweet. And because that's a lot of things that when you have somebody that knows what they're doing and can come in and support the families in their time of grief, that's what we're really trying to support with this ministry. So as our time closes, I want to thank you all for joining in. Thank you, Joanne, for joining us today on this session of Peaceful Passages. Have a great day. Shalom.
Shalom.